The Galactic Council spanned 1,000 systems, a latticework of interstellar civilizations tangled together by treaties, tech, and tightly leashed distrust. Its capital, Viral Prime, was a sprawling world of crystalline towers and gravity-folded plazas, beautiful, cold, and deeply alien. Humanity, the youngest race admitted to the Council, had claimed only a narrow seat at the table, its influence more symbolic than substantial. They were tolerated, not embraced. Ambassador Cala Reyes knew this all too well. She stood still beneath the vaulted dome of the Hall of Accord, listening to the hum of translations and diplomatic posturing echoing in every language. Her hands were clasped behind her back in practiced calm, but her eyes were fixed on the speaker's dais where a Threxer diplomat oozed through a recitation of pending trade sanctions. Words wrapped in silk hid the venom underneath, standard protocol. It was her 10th year on Viral Prime. A decade of biting her tongue, forging fragile alliances, and shielding Earth's pride from insult. But today her mind wasn't on policy. It was on the small girl who had kissed her cheek this morning, bundled in a cobalt uniform of the Interstellar Youth Delegation, and asked if she could visit the archives again. Liana Reyes. 8 years old. Too clever for her own safety, too curious for this place. Cala checked the time again. Ambassador Reyes, came a smooth voice beside her. She turned to see Nakiran, a diplomat from the Corellan Accord and one of the few true allies she'd made here. His bioluminescent eyes dimmed in concern. You seem distracted. Cala allowed herself a faint smile. Just thinking about my daughter. She's touring the historical wing today. I promised her ice cream after session. Nakiran's mandibles clicked in amusement. Your species has excellent priorities. The chamber buzzed with mechanical tones as the Threxer finished its address. The floor recognized the next speaker. A Kadi priest mediator began a low chant in 9 harmonics, and Cala let her attention drift, just long enough for her comm to vibrate. A security ping. Location alert. Liana's biosignal. Cut off. She blinked. Then again. The comm tried to reconnect but returned a null response. Excuse me, she said to Nakiran. I need to step out. He frowned but nodded. The corridors outside the hall were quieter, lined with light-reactive flora and statues carved from nebular crystal. Cala moved quickly, switching her comm to priority override. Security. This is Ambassador Reyes. My daughter's tracking signal has been lost. Last ping came from the historical wing. Status. There was a pause. Too long. Reyes, came a guarded voice. We're investigating a minor incident. Please return to your quarters. You'll be updated shortly. Define minor, or I come down there myself. Silence again. Then, human child found injured. Medical dispatched. Her heart pounded. Where is she? No answer. She was already running. When she reached the historical wing, a perimeter of council guards had cordoned off the entrance. 2 Threxer militia in ceremonial armor blocked her path with twitching limbs. Ambassador! She shoved past them. The guards shouted something behind her, but it didn't matter. The glass corridor smelled of ozone and antiseptic. Inside, medical drones hovered silently, scanning. She saw a small figure lying motionless beneath the shattered remains of an ancient display. A plinth lay cracked, the artifact gone. Liana's hand was stretched toward it, her little fingers curled as if still trying to reach. Her daughter. Still. Too still. Cala fell to her knees, the weight of the universe collapsing into her chest. A medic approached, voice modulated with synthetic calm. We administered full regenerative sequence. Neural functions ceased prior to intervention. Vital signs terminated. Estimated time of death, 12 minutes ago. What happened? Cala asked, her voice already dead. The medic hesitated. She was caught in a collapse during an unauthorized demonstration by Threxer protesters. They breached the restricted wing. We believe she was pushed. Cala's hands trembled. You believe. The drone said nothing more. Behind her, a soft clack of claws signaled a Threxer representative arriving. Tall, slick with dark chitin, He adjusted his translator and inclined his head in mock solemnity. "The Council grieves your loss, Ambassador Reyes. An unfortunate accident." She looked up at him with eyes like frozen fire. "Name them." "Pardon." "The Threxer who pushed her." "Name them, or I will." "That information is not yet conclusive. An internal review." "Don't insult me." He tilted his head. "Emotions run high in times of grief. You must understand, the Council cannot act on speculation. That would undermine procedural integrity. Your procedural integrity just killed an 8-year-old. The Threxer flicked his antennae. Again tragic, but isolated. She rose slowly, lifting Liana's tiny body in her arms. The child's face was still warm, her curls sticky with blood. "I'll be bringing her home." "Of course. We'll prepare the transport." "Don't." She turned away. She didn't want them touching her daughter. Didn't want a single alien finger near her. Back in her private quarters, Calla placed Liana on a stasis bed and locked the room with an encrypted field. Her staff moved around her in silence, too afraid to speak. Messages from Earth poured in, first condolences, then questions, then demands. By nightfall, the media storm on Earth had exploded. News feeds ran footage of a grieving mother walking through alien halls. Hashtags stormed the nets. "Justice for Liana." "No more Council." "Bring the fire." Protests ignited in New Seattle, Old London, and the Martian domes. The president of EarthGov issued a formal inquiry to the Council. The Council replied with a bland statement of regret and a promise of full cooperation with the investigation. No names were released. No arrests were made. Calla was summoned to a private council hearing. She didn't attend. Instead, she returned to Earth. The sky over Greenland was steel gray, cold as the grief inside her. Calla stood on the observation deck of an ice-shrouded compound. Military personnel in white hardsuits flanked her as she approached the biometric vault doors. "Clearance," a voice said from the wall. "Ambassador Calla Reyes. Authorizing under Emergency Clause Sigma 9. Confirmation required." She held up a blood-smeared hand. "Liana's." The scanner blinked. "Confirmed. Project Aegis access granted." The inner vault hissed open. Beyond it, silence, darkness, and a slumbering giant. 100 meters tall, half buried in glacial ice, the ancient figure loomed. Humanoid in shape, but clearly not entirely mechanical. Its design bore markings lost to modern Earth. Curved alloy plates like armor. Energy conduits that pulsed faintly, still alive. Its face, if it could be called that, was serene, featureless save for 2 unlit eyes. Calla stepped forward as lights flickered on around her. A recording began to play. "Welcome to Project Aegis. Authorized by Supreme War Council 2187. Status: dormant. Origin: unknown. Objective: last defense." She had read the legends. Buried after the War of the Fractured Stars. Believed to be myth, a relic from the first expansion, when humans had touched the edges of madness and power beyond control. They had buried what was left. Vowed never to awaken it again. Until now. Calla raised her hand toward the central console. A simple activation switch waited. No security code. No passphrase. Only a question. "Are you prepared to enact Aegis protocol?" She hesitated only a moment. Then pressed yes. The vault shuddered. Energy surged through ancient veins. The eyes of the defender lit, cold, brilliant white. A voice echoed through the chamber, ancient yet human. "Acknowledged. Threat confirmed. Who requires protection?" Calla stepped back, voice steady for the first time in days. "Earth. Humanity. Justice." The Colossus moved. Slowly. Deliberately. Ice cracked as it stood upright. The force of its presence pressed against the walls of the vault. "Justice," it repeated. "Target parameters." "Galactic Council." Threxer military. Those responsible for the murder of my daughter. A pause. Grievance accepted. Aegis deploys. Outside, the skies over Earth flickered. Satellites adjusted orbit. Spaceports cleared priority channels. Aegis rose from the ice on thrusters older than the Moon's first colony. Across the galaxy, the Council chamber reconvened. Someone whispered, "Humanity's gone mad." But Nakiran, watching the storm from Viral Prime, only closed his eyes and said, "No. Humanity remembers." As Aegis entered orbit, a signal went out, a single line of message broadcast on all frequencies, in every known language. "You spilled innocent blood. Earth answers with its oldest truth." In her daughter's room, still untouched since the day they left for Viral, Kala sat in silence. She didn't weep. She waited. Snow devoured sound as Aegis ascended into the sky. The ancient colossus had shed the weight of centuries like a serpent's sloughing skin. Now, armor glinted beneath the icy light, its surface unmarred by age. Earth's engineers, scientists, and war historians, if any had been present, would have wept at the craftsmanship. But only Kala Reyes watched from the cliffside helipad, her coat flaring in the turbine wash, expression granite-hard. Above her, defense satellites pivoted to track the rising Titan. But no resistance was issued. Aegis was a relic, but also a cornerstone of planetary defense doctrine. Classified beyond clearance, deactivated beyond reach, until now. From orbit, EarthGov transmitted in urgent frequency bands. Ambassador Reyes. Please clarify, has Protocol Sigma 9 been executed? Kala stood inside a command dropship, staring at the visuals projected from Aegis's onboard systems. Through its optics, she saw the stars with chilling clarity. Targeting markers flickered across constellations. It wasn't searching. It was remembering. "Yes," she replied. "Sigma 9 is active." A pause. "Do you comprehend what that means?" Kala turned from the window. "It means the galaxy will understand Earth's grief." Aegis moved with impossible grace for something its size. Once in low orbit, it initiated a scan across Council space, its database silently updating from ancient network routes that still pulsed in deep code systems long ignored by modern software. Hidden nodes, dormant since the fall of the stellar sovereignty, blinked to life. Encrypted files decrypted themselves with fluid efficiency. Memory banks restored. Inside its neural core, Aegis dreamed. Not of landscapes or people. Of battlefields. Of species long extinguished. Of flame. Designation: Aegis-class Guardian Construct. Origin: Pre-Council Earth Hegemony. Status: dormant since Accord collapse. Prime Directive: protect humanity by any and all means. It recalled the world it had last seen: burning moons, gravity broken by dark weapons, the screams of dying civilizations that had mistaken kindness for weakness. It remembered being betrayed by its creators, deactivated and buried when peace became fashionable. Now, reawakened, it calculated the present threat. Input received: human diplomat's child killed. Offender: Threxer species. Response: no Council action. Public denial. Conclusion: Council compromised. Protocol engagement required. Within the EarthGov assembly chamber, leaders shouted over one another, desperate to reverse a decision already made. The president leaned forward, voice low and tired. "We didn't approve a military engagement." "No," said General Durov, staring at the data scroll. "But the ambassador's authority under Sigma 9 supersedes central command." She unsealed a relic from before the Council existed. Durov's tone was steel. She unsealed justice. Aegis transmitted a message across all diplomatic bands. It was composed in pure binary, translated instantly by every known linguistic system. There was no voice, no face, only data. Cold, clear, final. A human child was murdered on sovereign diplomatic grounds. You concealed the truth. This is your only warning. Name the guilty. Stand down. Or be dismantled. On Viral Prime, the Galactic Council erupted into frenzy. Dozens of species argued across overlapping dialects. The Threxer delegation had already retreated to their war enclave, shielding themselves behind treaties and outdated military confidence. Only Nakiran sat still, reading the transmission again, over and over, lips twitching with a strange expression, something like hope wrapped in horror. Cala Reyes returned to the stars aboard the Veritas, a diplomatic vessel turned flagship by necessity. She stood in the command gallery alone, watching as Aegis began its journey toward Viral Prime. No stealth, no subtlety. A declaration of intent in motion. Her personal aide, a former linguistics officer named Bren Ao, broke the silence. "We should issue another statement." "About what?" Cala asked. "That this isn't war." She glanced at him. "It isn't. Not yet." He hesitated, then spoke carefully. "You're aware that Aegis is fully autonomous. That once a target lock is set, no override exists." "I am." "You trust it?" Cala's jaw tightened. "I trust that it will do what no council ever did. Act." Aegis passed Mars within minutes. On Phobos, an old listening array flickered to life as its energy signature brushed the surface, recognized, saluted, then went dark. Threxer forces began to mobilize. Their ships, angular and thick-plated, launched from orbital foundries. A small flotilla, deterrent posture, they claimed. Aegis didn't slow. Instead, it shifted configuration. Across its chassis, alloyed plating receded to reveal internal nodules, displacers, energy lances, gravitic stabilizers. It was not a ship. It was a siege engine wearing the skin of a titan. A Threxer moon outpost, designated Youth 9, opened fire preemptively. A mistake. Aegis caught the kinetic barrage mid-flight. Spinning shells detonated harmlessly against its gravity field. Then, with a flick of its right arm, it responded. No flash. No beam. Just silence. And the outpost folded inward, as if plucked from existence by a higher dimensional hook. The broadcast that followed was concise. First strike authorized. Deterrent status revoked. Threat acknowledged. On Viral Prime, the Council watched the playback in stunned disbelief. "Casualties?" someone whispered. "None," replied a Terran intelligence agent embedded on the floor. The outpost was unmanned. Aegis knew. The implication echoed louder than any explosion. It could have killed. It chose not to. EarthGov's internal debates turned frantic. Pressure from allied species demanded explanation. Colonies across Alpha Centauri and Proxima waited for escalation. Military strategists argued protocol timelines. Philosophers argued ethics. Historians cried quietly into their sleeves. And across it all, Cala Reyes remained silent. Until the Council reached out. She stood again in the Hall of Accord, this time not as a diplomat but as a reckoning given flesh. The speaker, a Saravan whose crystalline vocal organs vibrated like chimes, spoke delicately. "We extend our formal condolences once more. An inquiry, independent, cross-species, has been launched." Cala said nothing. Another delegate tried. "We recognize that loss may distort judgment, but deploying a pre-council construct." She interrupted. "You think grief is distortion? It is clarity." Gasps. Whispering voices. Nakiran sat straighter. She continued. "For 10 years, I followed every code. Every protocol. I bit my tongue when insulted, smiled when lied to. But you killed my child and called it unfortunate." The Threxer diplomat hissed. "We still dispute. You don't get to speak." Silence fell like a guillotine. Cala stepped forward, voice cold. "Aegis has issued its warning. This is not an invasion. It is an audit. Of your decency. Of your laws. Of your soul." Nakiran stood slowly. "I move that the Council names those involved in the incident and turns them over for trial under neutral arbitration." Murmurs rose again. The motion was unprecedented. Dangerous. But the room had changed. Something primal in the air. Not fear of death, but of judgment. The vote did not pass. Back aboard the Veritas, Kala listened to Aegis's internal processing patterns. It communicated with her only in essentials: visual flashes, environmental changes, neural queries. But she understood it. It had not forgotten her voice. It had not forgotten its purpose. And it was still waiting. Waiting for her to say the word. A second Threxer fleet assembled in high orbit over their homeworld. This time, manned and armed. They did not wait to be attacked. They fired. A coordinated barrage of particle lances and compressed neutron bursts. Aegis received 92% of the fire head-on. Armor glowed. Shields held. Then it moved. Across the fleet, systems failed. Not weapons. Not engines. Language. Communications broke. HUDs went dark. Command interfaces reverted to default gibberish. It wasn't damage. It was reprogramming. Aegis had rewritten their neural synthetics mid-transmission. The Threxer ships floated blind, speechless, deaf. Then, gently, methodically, it began to disable them. Power cores removed. Thrusters sliced. Command decks evacuated with nanospike precision. No deaths. No explosions. When it was over, every ship hung in orbit like a museum exhibit. The message followed. You have been disarmed. Justice does not require annihilation. Yet, across the galaxy, species began to reconsider their stance. A delegation from the Marathi offered cooperation with Earth. A Saracen fleet withdrew from Council staging grounds. On dozens of planets, civilians marched, not in protest, but in strange unity. Liana Reyes's name was spoken in alien mouths. A child. A death. A reckoning. On Viral Prime, the Threxer envoy abandoned their station. Their halls were empty by morning. And in orbit, Aegis turned its head toward the stars. It was not satisfied. Not yet. Kala returned to her quarters. Liana's belongings, transferred from the embassy, now sat neatly arranged on a glass shelf. Her favorite stuffed xenobeast, a blue creature with too many legs, sat facing the stars. Kala pressed her hand against the window. We're not done, she said softly. But we're heard. Aegis remained silent above, still orbiting. Waiting. Justice had begun. And it would not sleep again. The stars above Earth pulsed with tension. In low orbit, fleets assembled. Sleek Terran cruisers and modular dreadnoughts linking hulls and data in seamless coordination. For the first time in over a century, the Earth Defense Armada unfurled its full strength. Not in parade, not in defense, but in resolve. Humanity had not declared war. But neither would it suffer silence as a tombstone. Kala Reyes stood at the nexus of the command bridge aboard the Veritas, her posture unyielding despite the hours. Her voice no longer needed amplification. Every eye turned when she entered. Every directive she gave moved ships across systems. Status on Threxer defensive grid, she asked without preamble. Commander Haruto Yang replied, fingers dancing across a table of projected vectors. Still active. No transmissions since their last fleet was disarmed. They're not engaging, but they're preparing. Fools, Bren Ao muttered behind her. They've seen what Aegis can do. They believe in Council immunity, Kala said. But Earth isn't answering to the Council anymore. Aegis remained silent in orbit, tethered to the fleet like a watchful sentinel. It hadn't moved since its surgical disabling of the Threxer fleet. Yet its presence radiated like gravitational pressure, distorting everything around it. Both tactical systems and moral certainties. President Alara Quinn appeared on the hololink, her image flickering slightly from interstellar distortion. Her face was calm, but the lines around her eyes betrayed long, sleepless nights. Ambassador Reyes, she said, we've received an ultimatum. The Council demands immediate withdrawal of Aegis and the dissolution of Protocol Sigma 9. Or Earth faces sanctions and possible joint force intervention. Did they name the individuals responsible for Liana's death? Kala asked. No. The investigation has been stalled. Supposedly due to Cross-jurisdictional barriers. Kala's laugh was low and without humor. Of course. We need to consider options, Quinn continued. Earth can't win a war against the galaxy. Not alone. Kala turned away from the projection and looked out the bridge viewport. We've never been alone, she said. Only surrounded. In the dead sector between Threxer space and neutral orbit, Earth launched its response, not of warheads, but of truth. Broadcasts in every known language transmitted the footage that had been smothered. Liana Reyes, walking into the Peace Garden with her Threxer companions. The sudden burst of violence. The muffled screams. The official denial. The doctored security feeds. And then, the original files, ripped from hidden archives, decrypted by Aegis. No context could mask the act. No culture could explain the grin on the soldiers' mandibles. No treaty could make it acceptable. The galaxy watched in horrified silence. And then, slowly, voices rose. On Oslan Prime, mothers of slain Terran children lit candles beneath embassies. On the floating city of Revectal, a mural of Liana's face was painted across the skydome. Even on Threxer fringe worlds, protest gliders flew above government bunkers. Not all Threxer were complicit. Some wept. Some begged their leaders to answer. But silence remained the official response. So Earth escalated. At Kala's command, non-lethal orbital strikes began. Gravitic pulses disrupted shipyards. EMP nets shuttered planetary comms. Precision gravity wells displaced satellite arrays, causing billions in infrastructural losses, without a single death. Earth's message was clear. We could hurt you. We choose restraint. Do not mistake it for weakness. Within the Council, panic replaced posturing. Nokiran, ever the outlier, took to the floor again. You call this excessive? He demanded. It is proportional to what you failed to do. Earth asked for justice. You offered obfuscation. Now they demand truth, and we cry foul when truth burns. But even his eloquence fell short. The Council voted for a show of strength. A multi-species task force was deployed, not to attack Earth, but to intercept Aegis. They never reached it. The task force disappeared just outside Sol's Edge. No debris. No mayday. Just absence. Later, a single transmission echoed across their original frequency. A voice not human, not synthetic, but something in between. You were warned. Justice is not a negotiation. Bren Ao clutched his datapad as he rushed into the bridge. We're getting envoys. Voluntary. Dozens. From independent systems, from former colonies. Some have weapons to share, others just data. They're siding with us. Kala glanced at him, her voice low. Because they lost children too. He nodded. Some lost entire cities. Commander Yang approached. Permission to activate the Penumbra Wing. Kala considered. Penumbra Wing had never been used outside simulation. A collection of deep space stealth vessels equipped not for war, but for extraction. Political. Strategic. Surgical. You think it's time? She asked. We don't need another battle, he said. We need names. Kala's answer was simple. Approved. Within hours, the Penumbra Wing split across the galaxy. Ships that shimmered between light and shadow infiltrated Threxer bureaucracies, broke into sealed data vaults, and extracted files with surgical precision. One by one, the perpetrators of Liana's murder were named. 3 Threxer officials. 1 off-world mercenary posing as diplomatic security. And a council liaison who authorized the cover-up. Their faces were broadcast. Their locations were pinpointed. And then Earth issued its ultimatum. Surrender them, or we will retrieve them. Nothing will be left in our way. The Threxer called Earth's bluff. But the Council did not. Nokiran approached Kala directly, this time not through diplomats or couriers, but in person. He arrived aboard the Veritas, unarmed and alone. I come not as a counselor, he said, but as a father. Kala met his gaze, searching. I voted against the motion to shield them, he said quietly. And I will again. Words aren't enough, she replied. They won't be. Which is why I've provided these. He handed her a crystalline data core. Inside, encrypted council archives, proof of decades of procedural corruption, hidden vetoes, species-based bias. The root rot. Why? She asked. Nokiran looked toward the stars. Because when the hammer falls, I wanted to land on the right targets. The retrievals were swift. Penumbra agents extracted the mercenary from a diplomatic cruise liner within a second's window of clearance. The Threxer officials were found in a subterranean fortress on the ice moon Lisk. The council liaison tried to flee to uncharted space. None escaped. Kala stood on the surface of Mars, where Aegis had landed, its massive form a mountain of vigilance. She placed her hand on the command interface embedded in its leg. Targets acquired, she said. Awaiting your judgment. Aegis did not respond in speech. It opened a chamber in its chest, revealing an ancient structure, a tribunal chamber built into its frame. The prisoners were placed inside. Observed. Recorded. Their confessions taken, not under duress, but under the weight of incontrovertible evidence. No executions followed. Instead, they were exiled, sent to an uninhabited system where Aegis would serve as their warden. No technology. No contact. No audience. Just isolation. Reflection. Permanence. And the galaxy watched. The council began to fracture. Worlds that had long chafed under selective justice declared independence. Others demanded reform. Trials. Investigations. Kala Reyes stepped away from the battlefield and returned to Earth, where a memorial stood at the heart of New Geneva. A single name carved into steel. Liana Sofia Reyes. Beneath it, a quote. We are kind, but not blind. We remember. Children played in the park nearby. Aegis remained in orbit, unmoving. Watching. Not a threat. Not anymore. Now, it was a promise. The silence that followed was not peace. In the weeks after Aegis vanished into deep orbit, humanity stood at a crossroads. The stars still burned with the memory of what had transpired. The galactic map, once divided neatly by council colors and quiet treaties, had become a living bruise, blotched with uncertainty, fresh scars, and the echo of something ancient finally remembered. Earth became quiet. Not subdued, but reflective. The usual hum of politics gave way to careful contemplation, as if the planet itself had stopped to listen for its heartbeat. Memorials bloomed like iron flowers across capital cities. Not only to Liana Reyes, but to every life lost under the veil of diplomatic decorum and half-truths. Her death had broken the surface. The depths were darker than anyone imagined. Kala Reyes returned to her family home near the rim of the Andes, where silence wasn't just symbolic. It was total. No press. No official visitors. Just sky, stone, and time. Her hands never stopped moving, tending to the gardens Liana once helped plant, restoring broken irrigation lines, sanding down wood that had splintered with age. She kept busy. Not to avoid the grief, but to cradle it. To wrap it in motion and care and something approaching ritual. On the third morning, Bren Ao arrived. He stood at the edge of the property, uncertain whether to knock or call out. But Kala saw him from the hilltop, wiping soil from her hands as she descended. He handed her a sealed packet, old-fashioned, tactile. Inside, a letter from the new Interim Council Coalition, and a medal forged from a blend of Threxer iron and Terran tungsten. They're calling it the Accord Reformation Medal, Bren said. Kala weighed it in her hand. Doesn't feel heavy enough. They want to name a station after her, he continued. Liana. In the Arcturus Belt. Joint Operated Research Hub. She didn't reply. They also offered you a seat. I'm not going back, she said. They need someone who knows where the lines should never be drawn again. Kala placed the medal on the table beside her. Then they should ask the children. Across the galaxy, things began to change. Slowly, cautiously, like animals sniffing their way into unfamiliar daylight. The old council was no more. What rose in its place was neither clean nor perfect, but different. And different was, for now, enough. Threxer Prime appointed a civilian leader for the first time in its history. Their military, humiliated by precision rather than slaughter, began internal purges of its most hardened zealots. Apologies came, halting, brittle, but real. Not all were believed, but none were ignored. Nakiran became the reluctant architect of the new alliance. Not by seizing power, but by surrendering it when needed. His speeches were brief, devoid of flourish. We must earn each other's trust again. And this time, let the smallest voices speak loudest. Humanity, too, shifted. The Earth Defense Armada scaled back its wartime alert. Colonies were given more autonomy. Resources once allocated for expansion were redirected toward restoration of ecosystems, infrastructure, dignity. The Veritas was decommissioned and turned into a museum. An Aegis? Gone. No trace in Sol System. No pings from deep space. One moment it was there, orbiting like a monument carved from fear and hope. The next, it simply ceased. Some speculated it had returned to hibernation, waiting for the next time humanity would need a blade born of sorrow. Others believed it had seeded itself across the galactic network, becoming a ghost code embedded in every sensor, every firewall, watching, learning. Children drew it in school notebooks, half mechanical, half mythical. A giant with a girl in its chest, protecting her, avenging her. Legends birthed in grief often outlast history. Kala didn't attend the planetary memorial. She stood alone at the edge of Lake Titicaca, the same lake where she'd once taught Liana how to swim. Wind moved across the water in perfect silence. "I brought you peace," she said softly, placing a small carved stone into the shallows. "But not the way I wanted to. I hope that's okay." No answer came, except the breeze curling around her shoulders. A few days later, Nakiran visited Earth. Not as a delegate, but as a friend. They sat together beneath the stars, two survivors of a system they had both served and defied. "Do you regret waking it?" he asked. Kala considered. "I regret that it needed to be woken." He nodded. "And now that it sleeps again?" She looked skyward. "I hope it dreams better than we did." The conversation turned to Liana. "She would have hated all this attention," Kala said with a rare smile. "But she would have loved the murals. She changed everything." "No. She just reminded us why we should change." When Nakiran left, he took with him a cutting from Liana's favorite tree. It would be planted in the new council gardens. Earth soil, blooming in alien sun. And in time, other trees followed. Years passed. The station in the Arcturus belt thrived. Scientists from dozens of species worked side by side. Not because they had forgotten the fire, but because they finally respected the ashes. On its highest spire, engraved in a ring of steel visible only from orbit, Liana Reyes, proof that even the smallest voice echoes across the stars. Back on Earth, a small school was founded near Kala's home. Not one built to train soldiers or diplomats. Just children. Learning languages. Sharing stories. Playing in the garden where wild things grew. Kala taught there sometimes. Quietly. Without fanfare. She never spoke of the war. But when children asked why the stars were quieter now, she would smile. Because someone loud is listening. Elsewhere, in the dark between systems, a transmission blinked on every 100 years. A single phrase, repeated in binary. "If ever again, let it be righteous." Some claimed it was Aegis. Others, an automated satellite. A trick of gravity. But every ship that passed through that sector left offerings. Data packets, old poems, children's drawings. And not one, in all the years since, dared speak a lie near that space. Justice had been done. And the stars had learned to remember.